The second labor of Heracles, the Lernian Hydra. This video brings you an account of the second labor of Heracles from the series Legends and Myths of Ancient Greece. The main goal of this presentation is to describe the story and the significance of this mythological episode. The Lernian Hydra was a fearsome creature that terrorized the people and the animals of the region of Lerna. It had 9 heads, one of which was immortal and the rest were mortal. The Hydra also had a poisonous breath and blood that could kill anyone who came in contact with it. Some versions of the myth say that the Hydra was the offspring of Typhon and Echidna, 2 monstrous beings that represented the forces of chaos and evil. Other versions say that the Hydra was raised by Hera specifically to kill Heracles. Heracles set off to hunt the Hydra, accompanied by his loyal nephew Iolaus, who was his charioteer and companion in many of his adventures. They reached the swamp of Lerna and Heracles lured the Hydra out of its den by shooting flaming arrows at it. He then grabbed the Hydra and tried to smash its heads with his club. However, he soon realized that every time he cut off one head, 2 more would grow in its place. Moreover, the Hydra wrapped one of its coils around Heracles' foot and prevented him from escaping. To make matters worse, a giant crab came to the aid of the Hydra and started biting Heracles' foot. Heracles called for Iolaus to help him and they came up with a clever plan. Iolaus brought a torch and every time Heracles chopped off a head, Iolaus cauterized the wound with the fire, preventing the growth of new heads. They managed to destroy the 8 mortal heads, and then Heracles cut off the 9th, immortal head. He buried it under a heavy rock, as he could not kill it. He also crushed the crab with his foot. He then dipped his arrows in the Hydra's blood, thinking that this would make them more powerful and lethal. However, this proved to be a fatal mistake, as later on, one of these arrows wounded him and caused his death. The myth of the Lernian Hydra has a symbolic meaning and a moral lesson. It represents the struggle of the hero against the forces of evil and chaos, and the need to use both strength and intelligence to overcome them. It also shows that every action has consequences, and that sometimes the hero's own weapons can turn against him. The Hydra can also be seen as a metaphor for the problems and difficulties that people face in life, and that sometimes they multiply when they are not solved properly. To conclude, the second labor of Heracles was to slay the Lernian Hydra, a monstrous serpent with 9 heads that lived in the swamp of Lerna. Heracles, with the help of his nephew Iolaus, managed to defeat the Hydra by using fire to stop the regeneration of the heads. He also used the Hydra's blood to make his arrows more deadly, but this later caused his own death. The myth of the Hydra has a symbolic and moral meaning, as it shows the hero's struggle against evil and chaos, and the consequences of his actions. The first labor of Heracles, the Nemean lion. Heracles, also known as Hercules, was the son of Zeus, the king of the gods, and Alcmene, a mortal woman. He was a great hero in ancient Greek mythology, but he also had to suffer many hardships and challenges because of the jealousy and hatred of Hera, the wife of Zeus. Hera tried to kill him many times, and even drove him mad once, making him kill his own wife and children to atone for his sins and achieve immortality. Heracles had to serve King Eurystheus, who was chosen by Hera, and perform 12 impossible tasks, known as the 12 labors of Heracles. The first labor that Eurystheus assigned to Heracles was to kill the Nemean lion, a fearsome beast that lived in the hills of Nemea and terrorized the people of the region. The lion was said to be the offspring of the monster Typhon and the snake Echidna, and its skin was so tough that no weapon could pierce it. Heracles set off to Nemea, armed with his bow and arrows, his club, and his knife. He soon found the lion's tracks and followed them to its den, a cave with 2 entrances. He blocked one of the entrances with a large stone and entered the other one, hoping to surprise the lion. However, the lion was not in the cave, but outside, roaming the hills. When it saw Heracles, it roared and charged at him. Heracles shot several arrows at the lion, but they bounced off its skin without causing any harm. He then swung his club at the lion's head, but the lion dodged it and bit Heracles' arm, making him drop his club. Heracles wrestled with the lion, trying to stab it with his knife, but the knife could not cut through the lion's fur. Heracles realized that he had to use his bare hands to strangle the lion, as he had done with the snakes that Hera had sent to kill him when he was a baby. He grabbed the lion's throat and squeezed it with all his strength, ignoring the lion's claws and teeth that tore his flesh. After a long and fierce struggle, Heracles finally choked the lion to death. Heracles wanted to take the lion's skin as a trophy, but he could not skin it with his knife. He then remembered that the lion's own claws were sharp enough to cut its skin, and he used them to peel off the pelt. He wrapped himself with the lion's skin, which became his signature garment and a symbol of his strength and courage. He also took the lion's head and used it as a helmet. He then returned to Eurystheus, carrying the lion's carcass on his shoulders. Eurystheus was terrified when he saw Heracles and the lion, and he hid himself in a large bronze jar. He ordered Heracles to leave the lion outside the city gates, and from then on, he communicated with Heracles only through a herald. He also realized that Heracles was not an ordinary man, but a demigod, and that he would need to assign him more difficult and dangerous labors to get rid of him. Thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and learned something new.